Greetings and welcome back to room 303 and our chats with Emily, as we are calling our readings through the 1,775 poems of Emily Dickinson contained within the Johnson edition. We turn out to poem 32, When Roses Cease to Bloom, Sir. Now, it's going to be interesting. A number of the poems that we will study will always have this uncertainty about them. Like, for example, who is this Sir? We're going to argue that it's probably Sam Boyles, but we don't know for sure. And we're always kind of trying to figure out what exactly it is that Emily is doing in a number of these poems that are very personal in some ways. We're also going to be playing around with this recognition of Emily's, that we exist or we're here, but not for long. We've said it often, you know, we get to swing at the park, but we've got to go to the van. And we were learning this when we were quite young. And we're going to have some of that happening in this poem as well. There is as well a reading in this poem, and we'll come to it in a moment, that will posit a literal and then some kind of figurative reading of the poem, where maybe flowers are not actual flowers, but rather poems. Let's see how we play that game. And in some regards, she's playing in that same tradition of Milton, when I consider how my light is spent. That idea that life is passing and I'm not producing or I'm not creating as much as I wish I could. Now, our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. And I'm hopeful that you've been able to follow especially our intro lecture, and then all of our work up through and including poem number 31, Summer of Thee. Now, just for some background information before we actually read this poem, apparently Emily sent this poem to Sam Boyles. We think with flowers, maybe the flowers mentioned, and it's possible that what she'll be arguing in this poem is that you need to take the flowers from me now because there will be a moment in time when it doesn't happen. Let's just enjoy the poem 32 and then we'll exegete. When roses cease to bloom, sir, and violets are done, when bumblebees in solemn flight have passed beyond the sun, the hand that paused to gather upon this summer's day will idle lie in Auburn. Then take my flowers, pray. It's interesting that Auburn is mentioned. We know that Emily called that Auburn Cemetery outside of Cambridge, outside of Boston, when she was there in August of 1846. Visiting her aunt and her uncle, she was impressed by this famous cemetery. And so when she mentions Auburn here, that will be the cemetery that she is referencing. Notice that she begins with this when construction, very important to our study, obviously, of Shakespeare and of Milton. Of course, Keats loves to play when I have fears that I may cease to be. So this when construction, in other words, when in the future, blah, 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 right? When roses cease to bloom, and then again, the word sir. By the way, the original title of this poem was in 1896, With a Flower, which leads some to believe that it was, sent, the poem was sent along with a flower to Sam Boyles. In one of the earlier versions of this poem, actually it reads, When roses cease to bloom, dear. And then it was changed to sir. You can speculate as to why. And violets are done. Well, violets will play in our study of poem 90 when we get there. Within my reach I could have touched, I might have chanced that way. Soft sauntered through the village, sauntered as soft away. So unsuspected violets within the meadows go, too late for striving fingers that passed an hour ago. Notice we got roses, we got violets, but are we really talking about flowers? It's altogether possible that Emily is actually speaking with Sam Boyles about her poetic offerings. But she continues with the second when bumblebees in solemn flight have passed beyond the sun. In other words, there's a moment in the future. The hand that paused to gather, and again, this use of the notion of the hand and pausing could obviously easily translate into writing. Upon this summer's day will idle lie. In other words, when I die and I'm buried in Auburn, again, this is that Mount Auburn Cemetery outside of Cambridge. Then, so notice it's a when, then. Now, go back in our study of Chaucer's Canterbury Tales and those opening lines of Canterbury Tales, the general prologue, and you'll see that win, 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 then construction. I think Emily understood this. She knew it from her study of Chaucer, from her study of Shakespeare, study of Keats. Keats plays the same game. When I have fears that I may cease to be, then on the shore I stand alone and think, till love and fame to nothing is to sing. The then will be the very last line. Then take my flowers. Originally it was flower instead of flowers. And then notice the dash. And then notice the word pray, as in please, maybe. And then the exclamation point. Now, what are we going to do with a poem like this? I think it's very possible to read this poem as something more than, hey, I think it's important that you take flowers from me now because someday I won't be able to give you flowers. Obviously, we can read the poem that way. But I like to read this poem as actually poetic expression of a kind, where Emily is actually speaking to Sam Boyles, who might be influential and helpful in publishing poetry of hers at some point, and say, take these now while I'm still here, because roses and violets have a tendency to what? Wither, right? At 2a, I think all artists, we could argue, long for some kind of acceptance of their creative product, and I certainly feel Emily at times was struggling with this as she was writing these poems and sharing them with a handful of folks. At 2b, I love the idea that flowers can in fact be symbols. I love the construction of the when, then construction, and once you've seen it, you're going to see it again in some of her other poems. At 3a, I'd like to just direct you for a moment to poem number 441. This is my letter to the world that never wrote to me. The last line of that is judge tenderly of me, and you kind of have that sense with the word pray, that we have a similar kind of hope, right? Please accept my flowers here and now. And obviously we could be talking about flowers, but we could be talking, I think, as well about some poetic offerings. I mentioned Milton. I think Milton is often standing behind a whole bunch of Emily's project, both from Paradise Lost as well as from some of those great poems. And as I said, when I consider how my light is spent, plays nicely, I think, here as well. That constant sense, I need to be doing something. I need to be sharing. I need to be creating. I need to be sharing something. Finally, at 3b, how are we going to own a poem like this? What was a time when you created a product and then you needed help producing that product and you hoped that it would be accepted in some way, to maybe kind of understand Emily's hope that flowers will be accepted? And that is to say, what's a time you gave a gift and you hoped that it would work out well? Thank you.